Adam.
Alejandra.
Great to see you.
It's great to see you too. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. What what a such a delight to have you here this morning.
Me too. I've been enjoying the sessions I've seen so far. This is a great idea, a great concept, and so thank you and for doing this. It's just brilliant.
Thank you, Adam. Um, I was we were trying to remember when was the last time we saw each other. Do you remember, Adam?
Yeah, I it was definitely in New York, and I was pleasantly surprised to see you at a Juilliard rehearsal. I'm assuming '05, '06, somewhere around there. It's been a while. It's been a while, but
Yeah.
that was really fun. It was very meaningful to see an old friend. Uh, so that
Yeah.
was terrific.
I think it was 2006. I think.
2006. That sounds
Yeah.
about right. That
I,
sounds.
I I remember I was carrying my luggage, but I'm not sure if I was on my way to the airport or from the airport. I have no recollection.
I don't. I imagine if I hope we had a good place to put your luggage so you can just enjoy the rehearsal. But do you remember when you were in New York? Were you in New York for vacation, or were you studying, or?
No, I think I was passing by. I was on my way to somewhere else. It might have been either the conductor's retreat
Hmm.
or or in Cabrillo. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
So I see. So maybe you were on the way to Maine. That
Yeah,
would okay. Okay.
that would make sense. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think so. But that was great. That was really fun. And I hope I get to see you again when this pandemic is over, hopefully soon. Uh,
Yeah.
we can all reconnect in person eventually. So
Yes.
such a
Very
busy
looking forward to see all of my friends again.
me too.
So Adam, tell me, where are you these days?
Well, let's see. I'm coming to you from Englewood, New Jersey, which is just west of the George Washington Bridge. So it's very close to New York City. And I've been here a few years now. It's an easy. It's nice. It's not in the middle of the city, but it's so close that you can really take advantage of all the city has to offer, which is good. And let's see, I've been in the New York area really since 2002 in various parts of the metro area.
Mhm.
I've been in Englewood for a few years, and
And
yeah.
Adam, are you from around there? Where are you from originally?
I'm actually originally from the New York metro
Yeah.
area, from Long Island, New
Uh-huh.
York, and a town called Dix Hills. And I grew up there. Um, but when we met in Ann Arbor, I had already been living in Michigan for a few years working. So, uh, and it's funny, I thought I might stay in Michigan for the rest of my life. I really loved Ann Arbor. I guess we all feel that way. We want to stay there because it's so great. But eventually I had to break my addiction to Zingerman's and move out. So I have broken it. I still have withdrawal symptoms every once in a while. I think of the number 74 sticker. No, but I grew up in on Long Island, and so now it's nice to be back near. Not it's in New York, it's as in some other major cities, it could be only like 30 miles or 5 hours by car. With the traffic. So it's nice to be somewhat close to that area. I'm actually I'm working I'm working at Hofstra University and Juilliard, and
Mhm.
these two places are right. They're kind of all both within about an hour of where I grew up. So I actually find myself spending some time seeing old friends and old, familiar faces during that time, even though it's been so many years. So it's
That's
nice.
great. And your family is still there? Do you have your parents? Do you still have your parents alive?
Well, my mother and father moved to Florida sometime after, or actually when I was in Ann Arbor, they moved from New York to Florida as snowbirds. They would go back and forth.
Mm,
And then they moved full time some years after that. Unfortunately, my mom passed away last year
mm,
from pancreatic cancer, but she, after a long battle.
mm,
My dad is still doing well. He's down in Florida, and I have two sisters. One sister lives here in New Jersey, actually, and another sister lives in Florida near my dad.
uh-huh,
And so I'm often between New York area and Florida to see them.
uh-huh. Great. Adam, tell me how you started with music. How music came into your life.
Wow. Um, it's so funny. I think for many of us, it's like come into my life. It's been there since I remember. I mean, for many of us, right?
Mhm,
Um, well, my mom actually studied music as a kid and in college, and she was a piano teacher. And so I think as she would probably tell it that I was like plunking out notes on her piano when I was about 3 or 4. And I think, and so she was my first piano teacher.
mhm,
Um, and I played, I really studied piano and I started writing music when I was young. Now these were little silly tunes, but that's where, I kind of gravitated towards piano and composing earlier on. I did play cello actually for a year or two. And I think my hand hurt a lot.
mm,
I don't think I had the right bow hold, and I just something was not right. But I enjoyed that. But I focused on piano and composition early on. And while my mom was my initial piano teacher, she brought me to lessons pretty quickly. So I think by like age 5 or so, I was taking local piano lessons, and then my whole family on Saturdays used to get in a brown and go to New York City to take lessons at the Manhattan School of Music preparatory division.
mhm,
And it was I was I was the youngest, and my two sisters were taking lessons. And my parents would bring us in, and we would spend those Saturdays at the Manhattan School of Music preparatory division, which was I have really great memories of doing that for several years.
mm,
So that was kind of where my training really started, and
uh-huh.
I would, lots of great courses in singing in the choir, and it was a lot of fun.
A couple of weeks ago, Derek Vermel was with us, the composer. I don't know if you
Of
remember him,
course.
Derek.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's fantastic.
yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things that he mentioned is that he also started playing piano very young, and he also started composing very young.
Really?
And I was curious to ask him how did that happen, no? And something very beautiful he said to me, and he said, for me, music is just like drawing. I I will imagine things with the sound, just like little kids will imagine things as they draw, no? So it was
Interesting.
so beautiful for me to realize that I mean, to be honest, it never occurred to me. So for me, it was like such a great idea, no? So
Yeah.
was it kind of similar for you, Adam?
Oh boy, that's really interesting. I think that analogy is a very good one, and maybe it's not even an analogy. It's really how he thought about it, where it's just, kids are artists.
Yeah.
Kids are natural artists. They're painting, drawing, they're drawing in the sand. They're making, you know, silly pictures. They're making pictures of their family, of themselves, their friends. Um, so there is that creative impulse that I think probably um, has to find some vehicle, no matter what we do, whether we become composers or not. There's some vehicle there's some impulse to be creative that takes place early on. Um, I wonder, I've never thought about it this way, but maybe that's was that maybe that was one of the impulses that was sort of taking over. I just wanted to be creative. I'm sure there are some visual masterpieces hanging in the Louvre right now of my original drawings of my house. No, I'm only kidding. I, but I, but I liked the piano a lot. I think for me, it was also just fun to hear, like I would hear Sesame Street and, and again, a lot of these stories, I don't necessarily remember them, but my mother would tell me these stories later on. And so apparently I would listen to Sesame Street and then I would want to play Sunny Days, da, 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 like these themes that came on. Again, kids' tunes. Um, so I think part of it was just part of it was just the fun of reacting to what I was hearing. My sisters would be playing whatever their lessons, piano lessons, and I think I would imitate poorly, I'm sure, but I would imitate what they were doing, and I think that's why I ended up or that's why my parents steered me towards doing things that have to do with composition. I will say that improvisation was always, for me, improvisation was always fun, still is always fun, the most cathartic thing. Whether it's just out of, an idea out of nowhere or whether it's hearing something and reacting to it. Just like a kid, I think it's like a little kid sees the fire truck and sees red and just goes by and wants to react to it. Oh, look, that's a fire truck. There's I believe everybody has that impulse. It just comes out in many different ways. It comes out in their relationship with their childhood friends, perhaps in the way that they play games and imagine, we're gonna play house or war or whatever. So, but I could be totally wrong about this because but I've always found improvisation the most fun. I love improv.
I remember actually at Michigan, the times that we would share together. I remember you sitting at the piano and started playing around. No, I remember this, and now that I'm talking to you, it's like I forgot how fun Adam is.
Well, you know what? I think there was the environment that we had. There was a great environment there. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this. There was something very encouraging and safe for just experimenting with music, and there was also a lot of humor, and that creates the right conditions for some fun times. But I think, yeah, I remember. I often joke that improvisation was also my way of avoiding solid practicing. So there's, and I think there is truth to this because growing up, I was studying piano. Piano was my instrument, but I would be improvising and composing. But I think sometimes that took away from the practicing that I should have been doing, more disciplined practicing, so I would have better technique at the piano. To this day, I wonder, how much more facile I might be at the keyboard had I not been improvising as much and composing as much. Now, that's not to say that we have to sit here second guessing what we should have done when we were 10 years old. That's, that's nothing. There's no point to that.
I think that's part of life, and I guess that's the continuous. I don't know if struggle is the word, but that battle always of doing something that you should do and something that you just love doing, no? And who knows how would have been the other path, no? And it would be silly to even think about it, no?
That's right. That's right. But it's in some ways it is healthy to look back and appreciate what it is that we did to get to this point. And so you're right. Look, if the cost was that I wasn't practicing my Mozart sonatas as much, and that's the cost, well, that wasn't necessarily my path. But I was getting very into, even while I was at Manhattan School, and then a little bit after that, my one sister and I went over to the Juilliard pre-college division, doing the very same thing. And while I was there, it opened my mind to other kinds of music that we really weren't tackling I guess partly because of my age, but during that time, I also got very interested in jazz. And here again, I can think if I weren't so interested in big band music and Count Basie and Duke Ellington, and I might have been focused a little more on other composers. But we come to it at different times. I mean, this is a whole separate conversation. There's certain composers that we're really interested in, and that could it could take the place of other composers we should have been studying. I guess we get around to these things at different times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Adam, Katri Ervama is here with us.
hey,
and
Patrick.
she said, Adam, I love that. Kids are creative by nature and they will direct their creativity to something. And I see this with my kids all the time. It's true.
How about that? That's a great insight. There's that she sees it in her kids right now. It could be anything,
Yeah.
right? That's beautiful. Oh, that's so nice. I forgot. So people can comment as we're going. That's
Yes.
great.
Adam, you have mentioned a couple of times about pre-college division in Manhattan School and also at Juilliard.
Right.
I'm curious to know because every country is so different, no? And I'm curious to know how important it is to have this pre-college division in these institutions that are so incredible, no? As an opportunity for younger kids, no?
I think it's I think they're essential. They complement, well, they should be complementing what is available in the public schools. So these are supplemental Saturday programs which don't involve their own academic curriculum. The assumption is that when someone goes to these pre-college programs, they're in a public or private school studying math, science, history, etc., languages. But I think they play a very, very good role, especially for kids who are interested in music and want to really explore it, but can't access those resources in their school. So, and I think it's not just on an academic, it's not just the academic aspect of it, but the social aspect. I think these programs, I see this now as a teacher at pre-college, and I saw it when I was a student there too, that Saturday is the day where you feel most at home. Not that you don't feel at home in your school itself, but or at home, but I see it now where a lot of kids are kind of feeling like they're in their element. And so these programs, not every kid who goes to a pre-college program is going to become a virtuoso and go into music. I don't know what the percentages are, but it's the majority probably won't. But again, there's a creative impulse of, let's say, of a child or a teenager, and that impulse, the impulses may not be able to be indulged in their public school music programs, or at least enough. So I think having these programs are essential. But there's also a program I was not involved in, but Juilliard has been developing a lot, is the MAP program, and I'm blanking on when it was started, but essentially this is a program that is geared towards kids who don't have the financial resources or who don't have as much access to these resources. So the pre-college program often focuses on, say, the more gifted, or the student who has had access, whether I shouldn't say gifted or not, whether they've had more access to these resources already and is more advanced. But so what I'm getting at is that there, in one school, you have two different programs on Saturdays, bringing in all these kids from different backgrounds, and it's a great thing. I think it's essential.
Right. Fantastic. And Adam, do you remember how would be well, you do work in a pre-college division in Juilliard. How is it like a typical Saturday for a kid that goes to Juilliard, let's say, to pre-college?
A typical day at the pre-college would be, well, there's first of all, that everybody's taking a private lesson. So when I was when I was a student there, I took a composition lesson with a wonderful teacher named Andrew Thomas. Um, and then there, everybody takes classes in music theory. So that's an hour of music theory. There's a class in solfege or ear training and the combination of the oral skills. Um, everybody's involved in an ensemble. When I was at Juilliard as a kid, I was not I was not in the orchestra that I now lead. I was in the chorus, and I loved it. I had a wonderful conductor named Rebecca Scott, and we sang everything from Persichetti to spirituals to new music to Mozart and Brahms. I mean, it was wonderful. So there's an ensemble element. Um, and then there's often studio class, of course. And then there's some electives. And I don't remember taking many electives when I was a student there. And then maybe they didn't offer them, or maybe I wasn't ready for them. Probably the latter. But now we offer electives in, I don't know if it's not music history, but I taught an elective in conducting. And so there's some kids that will come in and spend an hour, learning some of the basics of score study and conducting. So it's a full day program on Saturdays, and then very often towards the end of the day there are recitals, and a few times a year there are concerts. So it's a true immersive experience, and it's a lot of fun to see the kids, go from like 9 in the morning, and this is after having traveled in several hours, some of them, all the way to the end of the day, and they get to the end of the day, and I don't think they're tired. They still, well, they're kids, so they have a lot of energy, but I think some of that energy comes from the fact that they've been inspired by their friends and inspired by their classes. So it's a high energy place.
That's great. But so inspiring, no?
It is. I, there are times I leave the building and I'm like, I'm so, I feel like it's a privilege for me to get to be around all these kids. And they absolutely amaze me. Every single year I'm meeting kids and who just make me feel like, and I don't really mean this in terms of regret, but what the heck was I doing at 16? I was going to these classes, but I was watching baseball games, the New York Mets play on TV, and I was just doing regular kid stuff, and they're doing the same thing too. These are nice regular. A lot of them are just regular kids that they just want to be kids, but they love music, and they have a passion for learning that is as inspiring as you can imagine. And so by the end of the day, I think I get as much energy from them as they hopefully get from me.
That's fabulous. And Adam, yeah, we met at Michigan, yeah. That's right. So tell me, how was the process going into Michigan? Because you did something before going into music, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about your path?
Sure. I say it's an unorthodox path. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it was right for me. So I guess connecting my path from, I was doing these pre-college programs really from first grade until 12th grade until I graduated high school. So every Saturday all the way through. You would think that by the time I got to the end of high school, when I was 17, I would go into music. But when I got to 17, I was a little bit burned out and I decided to go away from music. And at the time, I thought, well, I'll probably never go back. I'll just do something else for the rest of my life because I need a break from this. 17, I don't know anything, but that's what I thought. So I went to college for English literature, and I had a minor in music. And I would play jazz and I would do things on the side, but I really wasn't taking it seriously. And then after college, or I should say during college, I spent my summers at Interlochen Center for the Arts working. And while I was working there, I started to realize, oh, wait a minute, I think I really do love music. I'm not going to go get my PhD in English literature. I don't know what I'll do, but I think music needs to be some element, or it has to be part of my life. I just don't know how or why, or I don't know how to do it. So I finished my undergrad after my third year, and then I took my fourth year and I went to Oberlin Conservatory. again, this is getting us to Michigan, but um, at Oberlin, I spent a year just studying piano, and it was like my senior year abroad in Ohio. In other words, instead of taking my junior year and going off to wherever, I spent my fourth year at the Oberlin Conservatory focused just on music, kind of like making up for lost time in a way, because I had really not spent that time in the first 3 years. After Oberlin, I still felt like I wasn't necessarily going to be a musician full time, but I would at least go into arts administration. That would be a way of keeping the arts in my life and also indulging some other interests that I had in marketing or in PR and things like that, public relations. So I moved to Ann Arbor. I worked for the Ann Arbor Summer Festival, and then shortly after that, I worked for the University Musical Society as their marketing director. And so now I'm at this point, I'm in my early to mid 20s. And while I'm there, I'm loving this job. Actually, it was really a lot of fun. The University Musical Society was and is this unbelievable gem. It's an amazing institution. And again, I felt like, I felt like I was getting, in some ways, getting so much out of it just as a student of music working there. Just being around these great artists coming through and getting to watch, a dress rehearsal of the Israel Philharmonic with Maida and at the time, again, I wasn't even thinking of conducting. I was just staying in the moment, I guess is the best way to put it. I was very much in the present. And so while I was there, I was also starting to think, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to be an arts administrator forever? Or, and I started to really think about going back into music, but I didn't know how to do that. So while I was working there, I did two things. I spoke to some old teachers of mine. I called my old piano teachers and old conductors I'd worked with and asked them for advice. And one of them had said, Adam, we remember when you would come into your piano lessons, you would, in conversation, start playing the orchestral part of a Rachmaninoff concerto, not the solo part, because I don't have 3 hands and 15 fingers, which is, I think, what you need to perform most Rachmaninoff concertos. I'm not sure, but I would play the orchestral part, things that I'd heard by ear. So I'm kind of doing a bastardization of the orchestral part. But they said, you were showing a lot of strength in your ear. Maybe you should look at conducting. And my first reaction was conducting, but I never even imagined myself. I never sat there looking at Leonard Bernstein and saying, that's what I want to do. It just didn't occur to me. On the other hand, I was also thinking about the fact that I loved teaching, and I always had thought about myself as a potential as a future teacher, perhaps. And so I think the combination of these discussions with my old teachers and starting to network with some of the students at the University of Michigan School of Music led me to start thinking, well, maybe I should explore this conducting idea. And from there, I met Ken Kiesler, and he was very kind to let me come watch the lab orchestra sessions at the School of Music. Well, during an afternoon or my lunch hour, I would. Oh, I think my dog is trying to come into the room. Sorry about that. Come here, boy. All right. He likes to open the door, and so the door opens. I turn around. There's nobody there. Here he is. Sorry. This is Herbie.
Hi, Herbie.
Herbie is named, by the way, Herbie is named after Herbie Hancock, the jazz pianist.
Uh-huh.
You're a good boy. It was either that or Chelabadaki. And Chelabadaki doesn't have a ring to it. Come here, Chelabadaki. Come on, boy. So anyway, sorry about that. So ultimately, I found that I was really getting into conducting by watching those lab orchestra sessions. And I'm so grateful to the students who were studying at the time. This is Bandit Ngranksi, Michael Hall, I think, David Tang, and a few others, and especially to Ken Kiesler, because it was during those sessions, just watching the conductors learn, that I started to realize, I think I could see myself here. So I ended up spending, I continued working at UMS, but I started studying scores at night, and starting to think maybe I should really apply for this program. And so that's what happened. I applied to the program in Michigan, and then when I decided to finish my work at UMS, I went into the master's at Michigan in orchestral conducting. and Herbie is barking. Herbie. Okay, sorry.
Ah,
Anyway, sorry. I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but
no, no, no.
it was not a direct route from age 17, Juilliard pre-college to, I guess I was 25 when I went to Michigan. It was very circuitous, and I was very unsure about myself in terms of where I was going.
And how so you did your master's, only your master at Michigan, right?
I did my master's of music in orchestral conducting at Michigan.
Yeah.
Right. From
And
96 to 98. Yeah.
and how did you feel in those 2 years?
Those were, I felt like I put it this way, I felt like those were two of the best years of college I ever had. And I don't mean that it was like an undergrad. It wasn't. It's just that people look at their college years as those are the best years. And my college years were great too, but I was happiest I think of all my years in school, I think I was happiest during those 2 years. A lot of that had to do with the environment. A lot of it had to do with our studio. Um, I think there was also an element of relief that I was finally on a musical path that kind of made sense, and that I wasn't going to just abandon because I'm 17, I don't know any better. I mean, I really felt like there was a potential future there. And I learned so much. Needless to say, when I first started conducting, my technique was horrible. Um, I think back, somewhere there are VHS tapes with me, with like holding the baton like a claw, and I was just so awkward. But Professor Ken Kiesler, really helped me with my technique, and watching other students. I think we learned so much from other students, just perhaps as much as we learned from our professors in general. Um, so those 2 years were very, very special. And this is when you and I met you, obviously, as we mentioned before, when you were in the lab orchestra that I was watching.
Yeah.
And then I think actually one of the lab orchestra sessions we had, you played the Saint-Saëns introduction in Rondo Capriccioso. Am I right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
And thankfully, and you were very kind, because you made it so that we could really follow you nicely. So I'll thank you for that years later. Am I remembering that correctly? I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it could be. I'm trying to remember that moment. Yeah, totally. And I think also, if it is the same moment, if it was me, and Bobby Yang. I think he was also playing that piece.
Okay. Wait.
Remember?
Now, no, Bobby Yang played my audition. You might have been in this, but Bobby, he was doing Zigeunerweisen, the Sarasate.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. My audition for Michigan, oh man, that first audition was in one of the classrooms, a small orchestra. And it was the day we took the tests, and then he had us get in front and do Zigeunerweisen. And Bobby Yang I remember this look he had, like, like he was really gonna just make it tough. He was a great musician, by the way. I remember he was a fantastic violin player, but he was also going to be really free. And all I wanted to do was just get through this audition without, melting into the floor. Tough. I was very nervous for that. I remember I was shaking, and somehow I got through that audition, but I remember that very well. But that lab orchestra from that year, and from the 2 years I was actually in the program, boy, I learned a tremendous amount from the students in that group.
Yeah, I remember those times as being. I mean, your studio was very close. I remember, like, very friendly to one to the other, to another, and because I remember sharing with you, with most of you probably, no, and everybody was so open to learn from others, and was just really, it really felt like a big family, no, like we are all like learning new things, but not only that, I just, something that I love very much about Michigan, is that when somebody did well, you were there too, no, it's like, let's go, we're doing this together, no.
Yes, this is really true. And it's an easy thing to say, like, well, we have a community spirit here at school X, and we are really like a family at school Y. I guess anybody can feel that way about their school. I really felt this. It was palpable to me
Mm,
when we were in that studio. And I felt that about, honestly, I felt that about the orchestra in general. I was, um, I felt that the lab orchestra and even the full symphony orchestra, which we would work with as assistant conductors to Ken Kiesler. Um, but within the studio, I agree, it was a very very strong family unit, and it was. I think actually part of that happened to be that part of it was that Chris Kim, Alan Tinkham, and I came in as we came in as a class together.
mm,
So that for our first year, we did a lot together. There were others who were there from before, of course, and um, but it was nice to the three of us. It wasn't just the three of us, but I remember that core was a very helpful thing. We were both we were all three of us coming in feeling very very new, feeling very very not overwhelmed, but excited, but also knowing that we have a lot to learn. And with great education, when you go through a degree program, and by the time you get to the end, you realize I don't know anything. That means the education was successful, because you're not supposed to come out of it knowing, I've got it all. It's all right. I feel I have better skills. I have better knowledge of what I don't know.
mm,
And I'm going to spend the rest of my life learning it. I felt like Alan, Chris, and I, and everybody in the studio had that spirit.
mm.
Um, and this includes yourself. I remember that as you would take part in what we were doing, or even part of lab orchestra. Did you come to seminars?
Once in a while, yeah, I
Yeah,
would do seminars. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, and do you remember Tanya Miller? Tanya,
yeah.
who, I mean, she, I feel like I learned so much from Tanya alone, just as a colleague. And she was, I think at the time, she was doing her master's in with H. Robert Reynolds, or before that, and then she moved, and then she came into the studio with us
You're
for the
right.
second year. I mean, I really believe this, that I open up my scores now, and I'm sure you've had this. You open up scores and you see a note from a seminar that Kiesel said this, but I see parts of my score and I think I remember Tanya conducting this, or I remember Chris conducting that, and we learned so much from each other that if you
Mm,
don't have that community atmosphere, and there's a sense of being closed off, you miss a lot of the education that you come to school for.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
do
I
you
believe.
agree?
Yeah, and I remember Tanya. Remember that she started doing these Baroque operas. Do you
Yeah.
remember this?
Yeah, Michigan
And I
Opera, I think.
and I think I played for all of them. No, it's just
Yeah.
because always this spirit, to to have the experience also to learn in the act of doing. No, it was not just something theoretical in your mind. It
Right.
was just the experience of doing something that at least in my experience at Michigan, what made a huge difference. No,
Yeah.
uh, like I remember being probably in 5 different chamber music groups, no, because I wanted to learn the repertoire from the experience of playing the repertoire, no, not just reading about it, no, and
That
that really made a difference for me in at Michigan. Mm.
I think that says a lot about the environment, but it also says a lot about the individual.
Mm.
I remember your spirit. I remember your spirit, your approach to learning, and the fact that you just said it. You played in all these groups. You didn't have to play in all these groups. This was not part of the degree program necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of I see a lot of my Juilliard pre-college kids stressing about which college to go to, and one of the things I say to them, which sounds like a very educator's thing to say, but it's really true. Cliche, even if it's a cliche, is that wherever you go to school, wherever they wind up in school, it's going to be as good of you're going to make the best of it, or you're not.
Mm.
More likely, you're going to make the best of it because these kids are so motivated. But you will make that program as the great program that it is. It's not. It's what you make of it, and you, Alejandra. I mean, I saw this, and a lot of people, but you're a perfect example of this. You really you squeezed every ounce of value, and you got all the juice out of the orange. You know, that was important. I'd like to think that we all did that. It's not so easy because there's also in their classes that become very stressful, and then they kind of start sucking all the energy in one direction. But I think certainly if a student comes into Michigan and feels that desire to get the most out of everything possible,
Mm.
still finding work-life balance, etc., they really will thrive. And that's, at least that's the environment that I saw at that time. I found it to be a welcoming environment, and there were other people like me, like you, who really wanted to get the most out of it. And so therefore they would, and otherwise Michigan Opera Works couldn't exist. Otherwise, you know, the conducting recitals that, I mean, our conducting recitals, but that was not part of the degree program. You know, there were all these wonderful musicians at Michigan who said, "Okay, Adam," or "Sure, I'll play for your master's recital." On top of the fact that I've got 5,000 other things to do, they were so generous to
Mm.
do that.
Mm.
I still, I still, I still remember Anthony Stoops playing bass in Appalachian Spring, and I made some mistake, and it was like I just remember feeling like it was a safe place to learn. I didn't have to perform. I could be a student as well, and that's a tough thing for conductors, you know, because we have to learn in front of everybody else. There are no private lessons really.
Yeah.
So, um, did you? I want to ask you. You know, when years later, when I saw you in New York, and I think at this point you were moving towards conducting much more. I remember thinking to myself, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense." Because Alejandra was already a conductor in my head. Didn't you do like a Schubert rondo? You did a concert. You did a concert. You
Yes, you remember this, huh?
Mozart and Schubert. I don't forget the. Am I right about
Oh,
this? And
yeah,
you led from the violin, or do you
yeah.
conducted? Or...
Well, good memory, Adam. I was learning Mozart Concerto number 2,
Mhm.
Schubert Rondo for violin and strings, and Paul Cantor said to me, you know, Alejandra, you have so many friends that conducting friends. Why don't you ask one of them and you put together an orchestra and you can play these 2 pieces? And I looked at him and I said, I want to conduct.
That's
Isn't that
great.
funny? Yeah, so I played those 2 pieces and I conducted the Elgar Serenade for strings.
Oh, that's great.
So wow, it's amazing that you remembered this, because it
I,
was the first time that I actually conducted like in front of others, no?
that's huge. That's huge. That, I mean, that's huge, especially because also you didn't at the time. Yes, you were. To me, you were part of the studio. I think to everybody, you were part of the
Mm,
studio.
mm,
Um, but you weren't in the middle of classes. You were again doing a degree in violin performance. To put
yeah,
that together on top of everything, that's amazing. That's amazing. But
yeah.
but not surprising. Knowing you now all these years, this is, you know, truly this is it was that was meant to be. That was
Uh-huh.
meant to be.
Adam, Katri writes something. It's a little long, so but I will take the time. Says
Sure.
we volunteered for everything, and I think that is why we learned so much. No, Ale really got all the juice out of the of the orange. Now the students are looking a lot at what is required. No,
Yeah.
because there are many more requirements than there used to be. This supportive environment really does have a lot to do with the contingency of community-minded individuals. Here is a question for you. Can faculty create that environment if it is not there? Or if those community-minded individuals aren't there already? What are some of the things you do to build the support among students?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question.
Thank you, Katrin.
Thank you, Country. Definitely a faculty member can encourage that. There's no question about it. You're right. And for when we were in Michigan in the late 90s, we created it ourselves. we have to credit the faculty for allowing that to happen also. They could have also said, no, we don't want you doing anything but the curriculum. I think now we can create those opportunities by, first of all, actually creating them. Example, actually, well, so at Juilliard Pre-College, I started teaching conducting I think in my first year there. And I was there as an orchestra conductor, but we offered this elective, as I think I mentioned earlier. And I started teaching several of these classes on Saturdays. So it'd be like 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And then eventually I said, why don't we do a conducting summit? Meaning get all the classes together and do a lab orchestra. Now, technically, was this part of the class? Yeah, it was part of my class, but it wasn't. It was extra. But the idea was I was trying to get get them used to the idea of putting things together yourselves. In this particular case, we're talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who are only there one day a week. They don't have the facility necessarily to put together a group. But I think we as teachers can create, even if it's a one-time event, create a lab orchestra. I think we brought in pizza once, which is what we did when I first, tried to put an orchestra together for my audition tape before I was even in the Michigan program. Get a few pizza pies together, some soda, ask, make it fun, get some repertoire that people like, and just have at it. And I think if we create those opportunities for the kids to interact with each other, they'll take it from there. They'll run with that idea. I think some kids have. I mean, God, it's now going back 20 years, but I hope that some of those kids have continued on and found opportunities to create their own orchestras. I think a lot of that's happening in general. A lot of schools, I know Juilliard, there are a lot of the Juilliard graduates have put together orchestras on their own. I think the Knights, Eric Jacobson and Colin Jacobson's group, the Knights, which is a fantastic group. I believe they started as a group that they got together to read repertoire. Maybe it was chamber music repertoire, but it evolved into orchestral music. And I think these are becoming not just extracurricular, but I think they're becoming fundamentally important experiences, because we have to, I mean, this is an old trope, but we have to be entrepreneurs, and putting together an orchestra or gathering your friends together, even to read string quartets, that's an entrepreneurial endeavor. If we don't encourage that, to Katri's point, if we don't, I think we're depriving them of some element of their education. It's not written in the curriculum, I understand that, but certainly we have to encourage them to do what we did, which is to create your own opportunities.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Katri also, that I feel that we should be an example for our students in every respect, in our lives, and I'm talking this personally, like last year, for example, I do conduct an orchestra here in Santiago, a string orchestra. Mm-hmm. But I was getting ready with some repertoire to go with Ivan Fischer, as an assistant. Mm. And he was doing Schubert Fourth and Bruckner Fourth. And I have never done those pieces before. So I put in Facebook, I would love to have a reading session. Whoever who wants to come, happy to join. And I also said I will have pizza afterwards. I had pizza. 90 musicians that came, and I was lucky that the theater allowed me a room to do this. But I think that's an example of how we have to be like the ones who do, and eventually that will inspire others to do it themselves. But also I feel it's like a way of life, a way of living. Mm-hmm. Everything is possible, but you just have to believe in it and do it and do something about it and put it into action. No.
I agree. It's funny. I just heard a quote. This is totally out of context. It was a quote that maybe it's a cliche. Basically, we're not, as teachers or as conductors, we're not really teaching music. We're teaching people through music, right? And even the idea that you can do something beyond your own, the idea that you can transcend your own limitations that's a lesson plan. Or it's not a lesson plan, but it's the goal of a lesson plan, that you can transcend you can grow beyond where you think you are right now or where you will be. I'll bet when you got those 90 people got together,
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that there were 91, including yourself, learners that day, that everybody was learning, and that they, just by, and you were also setting an example by getting up and doing this. Did you say you did Schubert 4 and Bruckner 4 in this session?
Yeah.
Okay. They were seeing you do that. They were thinking one day I could do it too. We see ourselves and, or we see our potential selves in the people that we're working with. That's really great.
And it's interesting because this now brings me back to the beginning of our conversation about when we were talking about you playing piano and composing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was thinking about, and when Katri mentioned about being creative, no? I read a quote a couple of months ago. I don't remember the name of the person who said this, but he said the opposite of war is not peace, is creation.
Interesting.
So it was such an I had such an impact about this phrase, because when you are creating something, whatever it is, you are not destroying. No?
That's right.
And you put yourself in a space of a creative energy that could only inspire others. No?
That's right. That's right. I wonder, well, this becomes, in many ways, this becomes an argument for music education, because, or any kind of arts education. That if we have, you're right. When you're creating, you can't destroy. I never thought of it that polarity is really interesting.
Yeah, for me it was like open eye thing, to realize, and this is what we do, like artists, we're creating all the time. We might not be conscious about it, but we are creating things, and I'm not saying just creating something new, but sometimes you are creative just by trying a phrase in a different way. No,
sure,
that's absolutely being creative, and
well,
yes.
No, I'm sorry. I was saying interpretation is a creative act.
Absolutely.
To interpret something, every time we creativity is not limited to those who are actually creating from scratch, composers, authors, poets, etc. I agree with that, or at least that's the way we hope music interpretation is handled. There is no one way to interpret a line. I mean, there's well, how many recordings of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony are there? How many? It's just a few notes. Scoobity boom, scoobity boom. No, I'm kidding. No. How many different ways can you do it? A lot. And that's okay. Maybe that's an overused example, but anything, any interpretation, if it's thoughtful and mindful of what the composer's intending, these are all the lessons that we learn studying music, that if it's thoughtful, if it's true to the score, if it's true to what the composer's not only instructions were, but intentions, which is a whole different thing, then it's creative. I guess it's creative regardless, but it's there's still something about having showing fidelity to what the composer asked for, because he or she is also part of the creative team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's some Adriana Glaser.
Sorry?
Adriana Glaser. Is that a relative of yours?
I don't know who that is.
She mentioned before about how incredible of a pianist you are, improvisation pianist.
Adriana Glaser?
Yeah.
I have a cousin, Adrian, but they're like, okay, okay. Well, so
And
I'm sorry. Anyway, where? Go ahead.
so she mentioned before how amazing you are. Let me read this. Adam is the king of improv. Every family get together is the
This is
most fun when Adam sits at the piano for sing along.
okay. This is my cousin, Adrian Cohen. I was like, Adriana Glaser, what?
we just
80. Go ahead.
he says we just shoot titles at him and he plays them so naturally. He's amazingly talented and gifted. So he's with us today.
That's very kind. My cousin 80. If I believe this you're talking about, my cousin 80. My goodness.
And then
Oh,
Katri says,
very kind.
that should be the rallying cry for artists and teachers. When we are creating, we cannot destroy. And then Sherry Baron, I don't know.
These are my cousins. My cousins. Hi, Jack. This.
You see, she said,
I love my cousin.
I have known this guy his entire life and still learn about him and from him today. That is the message of this session for me. Thank you, Alejandra, for creating this opportunity.
Boy, that just makes my day. I'm sending to my cousins, 80 and Sherry. Wow, I can't believe that's so nice. That's so nice. Talking about who I learned from. These are my cousins. I've learned from them all my life. My goodness. I still do. I still do. Wow. Oh my, how is it?
You're famous, Adam.
No. I'm looking at the time like how is an hour gone?
Yes.
Can we do this for another 3 hours or so? Oh man.
Well, Adam, actually, as you said that, we have like 1 more minute to talk, and I just want to thank you so much for sharing your life experience today. Like you said, we need 3 more hours to keep talking and to keep remembering things too. No.
That's right. That's right. Well, Alejandra, I can't thank you enough. This is such a pleasure and an honor to do this and to be part of it. And you are creating community, a community that we've had and still exists because of what, in our hearts and our minds. And now you're helping us strengthen that community. It's really beautiful and amazing and generous what you're doing. This is a great thing. It's a great thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam, for your words. And I have to say that I have a soft heart for all my friends at Michigan, because I really felt all of you like a big family to me, especially living from a country, leaving my country to go into a different one. And I always felt so taken care of and loved and respected by others. So again, thank you, Adam, for being with us this morning. Thank you, Katri, Adrian, Sherry. Thank you, Georgina, for being here today, this morning. And I look forward to our next conversation this coming Sunday. So thank you, Adam.
Thank
you.
And
I wish you the best, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks, Alejandra.
Okay. Bye-bye, Adam.
Yeah.